Number. An alien hits a woman. Big mistake. Her husband is human. Number. Chapter 1. The Wrong Woman. The rain had been falling over New Denver for 3 hours straight when Kira Vasquez stepped out of the transit pod and pulled her jacket tight against the cold. She was late. Again. The lab had kept her past midnight working on protein synthesis models, and now the street between the pod station and her apartment building looked like a river of neon reflections, red, blue, gold, all bleeding into the wet asphalt beneath her boots. She didn't hear the Vorkai until it was right behind her. They were rare in the residential sectors. Most of the alien population kept to the commercial districts near the spaceport, where the atmosphere processors kept the air thick enough to suit their lung structures. This one was large, even by Vorkai standards, nearly 7 feet tall, with the characteristic pale gray carapace and 4 upper limbs that folded at odd angles when at rest. Its optical cluster, 3 eyes, arranged in a triangle, caught the neon light and reflected it in prismatic shards. Kira noticed it because it was blocking the entire sidewalk. "Excuse me," she said, stepping to the side. The Vorkai stepped with her. She stopped. It stopped. "I need to get past," she said, keeping her voice level. She dealt with aggressive drunk humans. She dealt with tourists who had no concept of personal space. She was tired, her feet hurt, and she had a bowl of freeze-dried noodles waiting in her apartment that sounded, at that moment, like the finest meal on earth. The Vorkai tilted its head, the slow, hydraulic tilt that meant it was processing something. Then it spoke in broken standard, the translator nodes in its collar struggling with the syntax. "You. Move. Sector not permitted. Human female. Move." Kira blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "This sector." It gestured with one of its upper limbs at the wet street around them. "Vorkai commercial expansion. Zone 14. You not permitted." "Zone 14? She looked around at the apartment buildings, the laundromat, Mrs. Okonkwo's bakery, that had been there since 2031. "This is a residential zone. I live here. I have lived here for 6 years." The Vorkai made a sound like grinding gears, the rough equivalent of a dismissive scoff. "Documentation is in dispute. You move. Now." "I'm not moving anywhere. Get out of my way." And then it happened fast, almost too fast to follow. The Vorkai's secondary limb, the smaller pair that most humans assumed were vestigial, shot out and shoved her. Hard. She stumbled off the curb, her knee cracking against the street, her palms skidding across wet asphalt. For a moment she just knelt there in the rain, staring at her bleeding hands. Then she stood up, slowly, and looked at the Vorkai. "You're going to regret that," she said quietly. The alien tilted its head again. It had already turned away. Kira pulled out her comm and called the one person she called whenever things got complicated. "Hey," said Marcus. His voice was warm and immediate, the way it always was when she called late, no matter how tired he was. "You okay? You sound—" "Come to the corner of Linden and 7th, she said, "and bring the jacket." A pause. "Which jacket?" She looked at her bleeding palms, then up at the Vorkais retreating back. "You know which one." Number. Chapter 2. The Man in the Jacket. Marcus Vasquez arrived in 11 minutes. He was not a large man, 5'11", lean through the shoulders, with the kind of quiet, unhurried way of moving that people often mistook for laziness until they understood it for what it really was. Absolute economy of motion. Every step deliberate. Nothing wasted. He wore the jacket. It was matte black, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what to look for. No insignia, no rank indicators, no branch markings. The Interplanetary Mediation Corps had very specific reasons for keeping its field agents invisible. Marcus had very specific reasons for agreeing with that policy. He found Kira on the corner, her palms wrapped in a bandage she'd pulled from her kit bag. Her expression, the particular combination of furious and controlled that he had come to understand, over 8 years of marriage, meant someone was about to have a very bad night. He cupped her face in both hands, looked at her eyes, checking, always checking, and then at her palms. "Tell me," he said. She told him. He listened the way he always listened, without interrupting, without shifting his weight, his dark eyes tracking every detail she offered. When she was done, he nodded once. "Big one?" he asked. 7 feet, maybe more. Pale carapace, asymmetric optical cluster, one eye sits lower than the other two. Marcus almost smiled. She'd been married to him long enough to notice that. Vorkai clan marker. Northern Territories. They're usually traders. He looked up the street in the direction she'd indicated. Not usually aggressive. Well, this one was. Yeah. He looked back at her. His voice hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had a quietness that went all the way down, deep and still, like water over bedrock. "It's going to be okay. You go upstairs. I'll handle it." "Marcus, Kira." He said her name softly, but with a finality that she recognized. Upstairs. She went. He found the Vorkai 2 blocks away. Apparently, in the middle of what looked like a territorial survey, it was placing small marker tags on the lampposts, each one emitting a faint Vorkai frequency that Marcus could hear clearly. His translator implant, the one no civilian model could replicate, rendered it perfectly. Zone claim. Contested human territory. Vorkai Commerce Guild. Priority 1. Marcus stood in the rain and watched it for a moment. Then he said, in perfect Vorkai dialect, not the trade pidgin, not standard, but the actual Northern Territory inflection, with the correct throat resonance. "You touched my wife!" The Vorkai spun around. Vorkai, as a species, were not easily startled. Their optical clusters processed threat data almost instantly. But this one actually took a step back. It stared at the human standing in the rain in a plain black jacket. It ran its translator. It recalibrated. "You speak," it began. "I speak 17 languages," Marcus said, still in Vorkai, "including 3 dialects that your Commerce Guild officially classified as extinct in 2089. He tilted his head the same slow, deliberate angle the alien had used on Kira. "I am going to ask you to do 3 things. Listen carefully, because I am only going to say them once." The Vorkai's posture shifted. It was very slightly just a millimeter of carapace adjustment, but Marcus was trained to read species he'd spent years learning, and he saw it clearly. It was afraid. "Good. First," Marcus said, "you will remove every claim marker you have placed in this zone tonight. All of them, before dawn." He let that settle. "Second, you will file a formal retraction with the New Denver Zoning Tribunal within 48 hours. I will be checking." He stepped forward once, slowly. "Third, you will never, in whatever time remains of your life, put your hands on a human civilian again, especially not one named Vasquez." He paused. "Are we clear?" The Vorkai's optical cluster contracted the equivalent of a flinch. "Who?" it said in halting standard, "are you?" Marcus looked at it for a long moment. The rain fell between them in silver threads. "I'm her husband," he said. "That's enough." He turned and walked back toward Linden and 7th. Number. Chapter 3. What Quiet Men Carry. Kira was awake when he came home. She'd showered, changed into the oversized sweater she stole from his side of the closet, and made 2 cups of tea, a habit left over from her grandmother, who had believed that tea fixed most things and the rest you had to fix yourself. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her bandaged hands wrapped around the mug when she heard his key in the door. Marcus came in, hung the jacket up, and sat across from her. He accepted his tea. For a while, they didn't say anything. That was another thing she'd learned about him. The silences weren't empty. They were full. He was always thinking, always processing, the way still water conceals everything moving beneath its surface. "Is it handled?" she asked. "It's handled. Did you?" "No." He looked at her steadily. "I talked to it. That's all." She studied his face. He was 36 years old and he looked it. He didn't have the kind of face that aged dramatically, but there were lines around his eyes now that hadn't been there when they'd met. She knew where those lines came from. She knew what the jacket represented, what the implant cost to install, what the 17 languages meant in terms of the postings they implied, the places he'd been sent, the things he'd had to navigate. She'd never asked him for a full accounting. He'd never offered one. That was the arrangement they'd found, somewhere in the 2nd year, built slowly and honestly, like good architecture. "It was scared of you," she said. He didn't answer immediately. "Good," he finally said. "Marcus." She set down her mug. "What did you say to it?" He looked at his tea. Then, at her hands. His jaw tightened. Just barely the only sign, if you knew him, of something moving underneath. "I told it the truth," he said. "Which truth?" He looked up. His eyes, in the low kitchen light, were very steady. "That you're mine to protect," he said, "and that I'm very good at my job." Kira was quiet for a moment. Outside, the rain had slowed to a gentle hiss against the window. New Denver hummed its usual nighttime hum distant transit pods, the low thrum of the atmospheric processors. Somewhere a dog barking 2 blocks over. "You know," she said, "most people think you're an agricultural trade consultant." "Most people are correct," he said mildly. "I consult on a lot of things." She reached across the table and laid her bandaged hand over his. He turned his palm up immediately, carefully, so as not to press against the scrapes. That gentleness, the same hands that had unsettled a 7-foot alien cradling her fingers like they were something precious. That was the thing about Marcus Vasquez that no one who only saw the jacket ever understood. The dangerous part wasn't the training, or the languages, or the 17 years of field work in places that didn't appear on public maps. The dangerous part was how much he loved her. That had always been the part with no ceiling. "Get some sleep," she said. "You first," he said. And because she was tired and her hands hurt and the tea had done its work, she didn't argue. She left him at the table, in the quiet kitchen, with his tea going cold in front of him and the rain whispering at the window. When she checked from the hallway, just once, he was looking at nothing, or rather, at something only he could see. She went to bed. He sat there for another 20 minutes, just being still. Then he got up, rinsed both mugs, and came to bed, and when she reached for him in the dark, he was already there. And